Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Film Etc., the only movie review podcast you need in life. My name is Mike Webb. I'll be your host, and this is our 6th episode. And the reason why I'm saying that is because next week's episode, I will be out on vacation, but I will record next week's episode in advance. But it's not going to be your usual episode where I review the new releases of the week and grade them on a scale of 0 to 10. Next week, however, I will be looking back and telling you all my picks for the best and worst movies of 2021 so far. But for this episode, we have reviews of F9 The Fast Saga, which is the latest installment in the ongoing Fast and Furious franchise, as well as reviews of the new Liam Neeson action thriller The Ice Road, which is on Netflix, and a Disney Plus documentary about legendary chef Wolfgang Puck, simply called Wolfgang. So, without further ado, let's get started. Just to give you all a bit of a heads up and a fair warning, I have high functioning autism. I don't do well in conversation, and so you may hear my speech get jumbled up with words here and there. So I hope you all forgive me, and I hope you all have a wonderful listening to this week's episode of Film Etc. F9 The Fast Saga is the latest installment in the ongoing Fast and Furious franchise. It is directed by Justin Lin, who previously helmed 4 installments in the series: The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift in 2006, Fast and Furious, which is the 4th installment, in 2009, Fast 5 in 2011, and Fast and Furious 6 in 2013. In this installment, Dominic Toretto, played once again by Vin Diesel, he and his crew battle the most skilled assassin and highly performance driver they ever encountered, which is his long-lost, forsaken brother Jacob, played by John Cena. The film also stars Michelle Rodriguez, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Ludacris Bridges, Jordana Brewster, Natalie Emmanuel, Sung Kang, Helen Mirren, Kurt Russell, Charlize Theron, as well as newcomers to the franchise, like I mentioned, John Cena, and in a small supporting role, Michael Rooker. Now, this is a film franchise that has been going on for 20 years. The first movie came out 20 years ago. First movie, it's kind of a Point Break ripoff, if you would call it that to some. The first movie, it's a Point Break ripoff with cars, if you want to call it that. But the rest of the movies, the first movie is fine. I didn't love it. I'm not a big fan of 2, 3, and 4. The ridiculous. All these movies are ridiculous. I thought the first movie was all right. I'm not the biggest fan of 2, 3, and 4. But after Fast 5, it just goes up to where the franchise hits new highs for me. Sorry, hold on. This is a film franchise that has been going on for 20 years. I didn't get into the franchise until Fast 5 came out on home video. They had a DVD Blu-ray combo. It was a weird time when Blu-rays were coming out and they were like the next big thing and they were trying to replace DVD. There was a point in time where they had Blu-ray DVD combo packs, but in DVD packaging. It was super weird. But we got Fast 5 on DVD and Blu-ray, and I watched it twice that day. It was pure fun. That was the installment where they're first introduced to Dwayne Johnson's character. He's not in this movie, sadly, but that movie just rocked my world. And I remember watching Fast and Furious 6 in a movie theater. I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of it. And just okay, just wait until that big dumb action sequence is done. In fact, all the Fast and Furious movies have ridiculously dumb action sequences throughout all their movies. I think since number 5, they just ante up the stakes and just get rid of all logic and physics and whatnot. Just throw that all out the window. I didn't get super into the franchise until the sudden passing of Paul Walker. And then when Furious 7 was coming out that week, I was catching up on all the Fast and Furious movies in general. I like number 1, fine. It's kind of a Point Break knockoff. I'm not the biggest fan of 2, 3, or 4. You could say they're all ridiculous all at once, but it's those movies alone, they just don't have a good story and they don't have the best acting overall. In fact, not all the movies have the best acting in this series overall. It wasn't until Fast 5 came out where it just like put the franchise onto a new level. And then we got Fast and Furious 6, once again directed by Justin Lin, which was incredible. They had like a tank come out of a military convoy, and they had like the world's longest airport runway in like Spain that, I don't know, went for like, I don't know, 60, 70 miles. It's ridiculous. And then Furious 7, which is a nice little tribute to Paul Walker. And then Furious 8, they had the big submarine. And then you had the Hobbs and Shaw movie, which to me feels straight up pure guilty pleasure. Like, I had fun watching it. I just don't buy the fact that Jason Statham and Vanessa Kirby are like brother sister and they're almost like the same age, even though Jason Statham is like 20 years older than Vanessa Kirby, which is super weird. But anyway, in number 9, they like ante up the stakes with like, oh, there's gonna be another MacGuffin involved, and they're just like messing with magnets and stuff like that. Like, all these movies are just like turn your brain off, pure popcorn entertainment. In fact, most of these movies in the franchise are just simply fun to watch. What's really different, though, is that they did bring back Justin Lin, who carried the franchise through its ups and downs in general. And I like that he's coming back. We've had directors that have come on to direct installments since Lin's departure, including Furious 7, which was directed by James Wan, who would later make Aquaman. We had F. Gary Gray, who did the 2003 remake of Italian Job, which also starred Charlize Theron. But I like that Justin Lin comes back, knowing that the franchise needs to get back up into where the franchise was at that point. But what's surprisingly different, though, is that this movie, they have flashback sequences that revolve around Dom and Jacob's past. You have actors who are playing the younger versions of those characters, and those scenes alone, they feel very solid. I also like, and he's in the marketing, the return of Han, Sung Kang playing him. Justice for Han. I cannot wait to see where his character goes. But some of the problems that I had involve around mainly the story in general. Like, it's a little, I wouldn't call it convoluted, but it's a little bit messy, to say the least. I mentioned the return of the character Han, but the way we find out about what happened to him since the previous installments, it just leaves a lot of people shrouded in mystery. Not only that part, I won't spoil what happens to him for those who haven't seen the other installments. But speaking about leaving in a shroud of mystery, we are suddenly introduced to a brother played by John Cena. We are already established that Dominic Toretto has a brother named Vince, but I won't say what happens to his character if you haven't seen any of the other previous installments. But then all of a sudden, we're introduced to a new character who is a relative that hasn't been explained up to at that point. That feels very weird. And Jordana Brewster comes back as Mia. She's just there for a paycheck or something like that. I don't know. But we are also intent to believe that a certain character, I will not say who, is still alive in this very existing world. And I thought to myself, this is completely weird. Like, why are they going this route? And I do fail to mention about the ridiculous in nature of it all. There is a sequence where two of the characters in the film, they go up to space. Like, we knew quite some time that it was doing silly shenanigans and whatnot. And they get to climb the barriers, just like throw everything logical and physical out the window. I just said that it's just pure popcorn entertainment. Charlize Theron is in the marketing as well, but she's only in the movie for like 5 minutes. Oh, and speaking about time, this is the longest Fast and Furious movie to date. Some of the earlier installments are like hour 45, 2 hours, a little bit more than 2 hours. This movie is 225. It's almost pushing the 2.5 hour mark, which is crazy to think about. Cardi B has a cameo. She may be like a scene stealer cameo, if you would like to call it that, but for me personally, I just couldn't understand a word she was saying. That's on me. I have nothing against her in general. But the reason why I'm giving this movie a pass is because it's the fun of it all. It's ridiculously entertaining. I like it better than the last movie, number 8, because number 8 I had story issues with it overall, and it just made me feel a little despicable in some places, like a little bit angry, but I still thought this was fun. This was not as despicable as the last entry, in my personal opinion, but it's again, it is still a fun, enjoyable movie to watch in a movie theater. If you go see F9, it is definitely worth seeing on the big screen. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on F9, the Fast Saga. And now here's my thoughts on The Ice Road, starring Liam Neeson. The Ice Road is written and directed by Jonathan Hensleigh, who's perhaps best known for directing 2004's The Punisher, starring Thomas Jane. The film stars Liam Neeson, and the plot is simple. After a remote diamond mine collapses in the far northern regions of Canada, an ice road driver must lead an impossible rescue mission over a frozen ocean to save the trapped miners. The film also stars Benjamin Walker, Amber Midthunder, Marcus Thomas, Holt McCallany, Martin Sensmeyer, and Lawrence Fishburne. Oh boy. You guys, I'm going to be very brief about this movie because this movie is not good. This movie is super formulaic and not in a good way. You get the trappings of a normal action thriller. You find out somebody is going to be the bad guy later on and is going to like get rid of the main character's plans and just like destroy everything. This is a movie about corporate greed and how there's a company there that just like wants to call it as like insurance fraud and something like that. The story overall is a mess. The action is terrible. The camera work is off-putting. They're not very memorable action scenes. The acting sucks. The VFX is garbage. It's his normal Irish accent in this movie. Here are the things that I do enjoy. Liam Neeson is always doing his best, and I like that there is at least a little bit of sense of character development towards him, and he has a brother who's like a war veteran who has PTSD, and he has another form of disorder. I can't remember what. I think it's like athlesia or something like that. I can't remember, but it's also always nice to see Lawrence Fishburne. Like, he knows what movie he's in. He's only in the movie for like, I don't know, the first 20 minutes of it, and it did feel suspenseful at times, but overall, guys, do not bother with The Ice Road. But if you are a fan of Liam Neeson's action movies, like, I like the first Taken fine. I didn't like Taken 2. I didn't see Taken 3 because I heard it was a ripoff of The Fugitive. I like Unknown. Nonstop is all right. I wasn't a big fan of The Commuter. I didn't like Honest Thief. And my parents saw The Marksman, and they didn't like it either. And they watched this, and my mother thought it was terrible. But anyway, guys, if you're a Liam Neeson fan, if you just want to have like a nice little action thriller, be my guest, but I didn't care for it. In fact, I failed to mention this is like part of an unofficial trilogy where Liam Neeson is stuck in the harsh, cold winterness of it all. You had The Gray, which came out in 2012, where he survives a plane crash and he has to like fight a bunch of wolves or something like that. And then you had Cold Pursuit, where he plays an ice plow driver, and he's that one plays out more like a farce. Actually, I wouldn't call it like a farce, but more like a crime comedy, kind of like in the vein of Fargo, where Liam Neeson is trying to find out who murdered his son or something like that. But anyway, guys, The Ice Road, do not bother. Those are my thoughts. And now here are my thoughts on the new documentary, Wolfgang. Wolfgang is a documentary about world-renowned chef Wolfgang Puck. It is directed by David Gelb, who is no stranger to food-related documentaries in general. He directed the incredible Jiro Dreams of Sushi about the sushi house in Japan that was awarded 3 stars by Michelin. He is also the creator of the Netflix series Chef's Table. This is basically a documentary about Wolfgang Puck and how he became the celebrity chef, the chef caterer, if you want to call it that. Just became like a big personality in like the early days of like the food scene, and how it was like blowing up, and how chefs can become household names in particular. The documentary plays out kind of like a rags to riches story, where in his early childhood in Austria, he had a troubled dealing with his stepfather. And at age 14, he came into a restaurant nearby, and he was just peeling potatoes. And when they were out of potatoes one day, the owner came in and just like scurried him off. And he just had like nowhere to go. He couldn't go back to his stepfather or something like that. And it was like, I'm here to make this right. And by the and then he ends up going back to the hotel. The owner comes in and says, well, why don't we put you in the hotel next door and see what they can do? And then from that moment on, he goes to culinary school in Paris, or not really culinary school, but a French restaurant in France. And then he moves to America. And then he works at this restaurant called Mamazon, which when he first looks at it, it's just boring food. It's just like put in freezer. It doesn't taste good or something like that. It's just like so artificial and something like that. And he helped pay the way Americans looked at food. And then when he became very successful with his job at Mamazon, he then ended up leaving that job with his girlfriend, soon to be ex-wife, and they ended up opening a restaurant in Hollywood called Spago. And then you could see from his feelings at that moment on, he is just like extremely worried. He was worried this was going to fail overnight. It became a huge success. And there are even like different stories of how he like transformed the way we eat dishes and stuff. And just like, oh, we don't have that. Let's think of something else, and it'll come to mind immediately. This basically plays out like a normal documentary. You get to see like the highs and lows, why he's so beloved and everything. It's not a long documentary. It's only 78 minutes long. It just shows you the basic ins and outs. There's different people that get to interview, including his ex-wife and a couple other journalists around the LA area. But it basically showcases his life, the humble beginnings of his life to where he is up now. And this is some of the problems that I have. We're not fully delved into the past, because I think it was part of the filmmaker's intention to not showcase it that much, because of how the subject just doesn't want to talk about it too much, or just probably just like find it depressing. There's also this weird aspect where we look at dramatization of the past, and it kind of looks distorted. Like it kind of looks like you're seeing like a double vision. It just felt a little off-putting in some areas. Now you all have to probably forgive me of this, but I didn't know who Wolfgang Puck was until, I don't know, a few years ago. Like, I am part of a generation who just looks up recipes on like Instagram or Twitter and just like follows Tasty or whatever and just watches videos there. And I watched a video from Tasty one time where it featured Wolfgang Puck, and I was like, oh, he must be a very famous chef. Again, I just said he just changed the way we looked at American cuisine in general. In fact, he even opened a restaurant a few years after Spago called Chinois, where he took Chinese cuisine and then added like the French cooking elements to it. In fact, so much so, he helped create the Chinese chicken salad as we know it today. Had we not known about that, we wouldn't have seen like the Chinese chicken salad kits up on like our produce or something like that. That's how inspirational Wolfgang Puck is. There are like interesting bits where he just has this like open personality, just just like does not want to stop about cooking, just like doing the things that he loves. And he is like a big caterer. He like caters like all the like award shows and whatnot. There's even one point during at one particular Oscars where he gets chocolate in the mold of an Oscar statuette and then cover it in edible 24 karat gold. That's how incredibly talented Wolfgang Puck is. But yeah, I I didn't know who Wolfgang Puck is. I mean, I know kind of who he was. Like I knew he was a very famous chef. I just didn't know what for. There's this one funny bit where the late night host Johnny Carson, he was just taking a lot of pizzas to go, and then Wolfgang called him up and was like, "Why are you taking this many pizzas? Like a dozen pizzas?" And then Johnny Carson replies like, "Well, I put them in my freezer. It's just that good." And then it gave him the idea of putting his pizzas in like freezer food items and all that stuff. Just like expanded upon him, making himself a brand, a household name, if you would like to call it that. But anyway, guys, it's a very basic documentary. It'll make you feel good. I didn't get anything investing or enriching or something like that. There are scenes where he goes back to his hometown in Austria and visits his sister, but that stuff gets just like dies down from like all the major success that Wolfgang Puck has been going through. So guys, if you are interested in watching movies about Wolfgang Puck, even if you don't know who Wolfgang Puck is, which I doubt it, this is a documentary that you would have a nice time watching with. It's not like normal food documentaries where you just look at like the food and just like have your mouth watering. No, this is more about the chef and his story overall. But anyway, guys, Wolfgang is out available. It's now streaming on Disney Plus. And now let's get to our review roundup and call it a day. So if you guys are new to the show or if you need a little bit of a refresher, this is how I grade the movies. I grade them on a scale from 0 to 10. If you have a movie that is somewhere between 8.1 to 10 on my ratio, that is a movie I would consider give it a whole recommendation. Go see it. Go for it. It's universally acclaimed or something like that. Even if it's a movie that I wouldn't like watch again because if it's like too powerful or something like that, but still enjoy it for what it is as a filmmaking point, then that's my personal opinion in general. That's not the case for this week. Somewhere between a 7 to an 8 is still enjoyably recommended, but not as high as an 8.1 to a 10. That's not the case for this week. Somewhere between a 6 to a 6.9, I'm going to be like, it's fine to just meh in general. Anywhere between a 5 to a 5.9 is just average, down, middle of the road. It's mediocre or it's fair. And then movies that are under a 5, I would just not bother at all. So anyway, guys, for Wolfgang, I'm actually going to bump my number up to a 6.5. I mean, even though it's not like a food documentary, like you just like look at the food and you're just mouth waters or something like that, I still got a bit of who Wolfgang Puck was in general. And I failed to mention, you see his life and how he was trying to like become a father, and he was just like struggling balancing that act between being a father and cooking and being a celebrity chef and all that. But yeah, it's still a wonderful documentary. So yeah, 6.5 for Wolfgang. The Ice Road, I would give a 3.5. It's just bogged down. Liam Neeson just like trying to do it. In fact, I would prefer Liam Neeson get back into more of the dramatic acting rather than just being just an action star. Like he's old, like he's almost 70. He needs to like I don't know, get like a pension for his retirement and just like, you know what, I'm going to do more dramatic projects. This action gig is wearing off for me and all that stuff. But yeah, 3.5 out of 10. Don't bother for the Ice Road. And F9, the Fast Saga, Fast and Furious 9, that's a solid 6 out of 10. All those problems that I just like find complicated with the main film overall, You're just there for the dumb, fun, ridiculous action. I mean, this is stupid in a good, entertainingly enjoyable way. Anyway, guys, that's it for the releases this week. And now let's end this program. That does it for this week's episode of Film Etc. I really am in the mood to try one of Wolfgang Puck's recipe after watching that Wolfgang documentary. But anyway, guys, I mentioned this at the top of the show, but next week it will not be usual. I am covering the best and worst movies of 2021 so far. I'm recording this episode in advance, so by the time that episode drops, I will be on vacation. But anyway, guys, you can subscribe and follow this podcast on the many places that this show streams, including Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, you name it. Please leave a 5-star rating so that it'll climb up to the top of the charts. Tell your friends, spread the word all about it. I cannot wait to see where this show goes. You can follow me on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RealMikeWebb. You can also follow the show on Instagram at FilmETCcast. Thank you all so much for listening, and until next time, I will see you all at the cinema.